Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are continuing on with our film journey. This time I got my friend Charles, and today with Charles, how are you, buddy?
Oh yeah, that's my too. Hi.
Great start. It's great.
No,
You doing good?
wait. Yeah, it's the heat wave here in Seattle has just passed. I mean, it'll probably be back next week, but for the past like two, almost 3 weeks, it's been like mid 90s to 100. So it's been not very like productive for me to do anything in these past few days.
It's kind of the same over here in Missouri, but like the humidity is just killing me. Luckily, we're I guess to the 90s now. Like we were in less like the hundreds the last couple of weeks, but I feel like the whole world was in the hundreds like the last few
Yeah,
weeks.
a lot. Yeah, I feel like that too. But like some places like get lower temperatures when other places are like very hot, and I'm just like, it's like my sister's in California right now, and she was like, "Oh, it's only mid 70s there," when it was like in the hundreds here, and I was like, I don't understand. It's California. It should be burning, and yet I'm burning here.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I don't know what's going on. We don't talk about the weather. We we talk about movies and music. In fact, um that's actually one of the reasons why like I've found you, of course, is obviously our shared love of both mediums, but like I always find it interesting because something that I don't talk about on my channel too often is music. And
Hmm.
you're always doing reactions and album reviews of like a lot of albums that I'm listening to. Is like, oh, somebody I know who's talking about them. Like that's awesome. So
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing my channel, it was like I think toward the end, like the end of the first year of the pandemic in 2020, and I was just like, I'm bored. Let me just do something to get like some creative outlet to do, basically. So I was like doing music things and movie things because I really like talking about both. And yeah, like for the first year, I really was like, okay, let's full steam and just do this. But it's been like 2 years now, and I'm just like, I will post videos when I'm feeling very like into it, whether it be about movies or music. And it's very hard to do music because the whole copyright thing of it all, which is why I'm like that one. It's like unless I'm really feeling like it, then I will like do it. But now I'm just like I try focusing more on movies because it's not easy to copyright that unless you include like clips or things like that. So that's why I'm like movies or videos about movies and TV shows and all that are easier for me to make.
and it's, yeah, like you were saying, it's a safer bet on when you can utilize some like photos or footage or whatever instead of just copyrights, which are a pain in the butt with YouTube. But we're not going to talk about that. So, yeah, but yeah, so I've been seeing your channel for quite some time, and I've enjoyed your content. So I definitely wanted to reach out about a film journey for a while now. So I'm thankful for you to join along. So thank you for yeah, jumping onto the show.
Thanks. When it comes to like making videos or even writing like my little reviews I do on Letterboxd, sometimes I'm like, am I just writing this into the void? And then like sometimes on Letterboxd, especially when someone unfollows me, I'm like, but you were reading it, which means I clearly like bothered you. So I'm like, people are reading and watching, they're just not like saying anything. And I'm like, that's fine because that's what I do too. But it's always nice to know that people are watching it, and especially if they like it. That's why I'm like,
Yeah, I mean that's the hope. Hopefully, that's why we're here to hopefully get some people to be like, well, this person's rather interesting, so maybe they have something to say. So, but yeah, so anyone who's watching this, who's seen the film journey before, what we do is we do a deep dive on the guests' film journey from their early memories all the way up to where they're at now. So that's what we're going to begin with today. But before we jump into that, I do want to ask you, what have you recently been watching? Speaking of Letterbox, if you're
Uh,
at.
yeah, for like the past, I think it was 3 years, I made it my goal to watch one movie every single day, but it like broke this year when I started going on vacations. I was like, okay, that's over. Like once the pattern was broken, I was like, it's done. Movie every day is not happening anymore this year. Let's just watch whenever we watch. But it's funny because the past few days I've done rewatches. But the two most recent movies I watched were last night I watched The Dam from Lucio Visconti. That was a very excellent film. And I watched Rouge. I forget how to pronounce the director's name. I also watched Death Becomes Her, and because it was the anniversary, I think it was the I forget. I think it was like 30th or 25th, something like that. It was it was a while ago, the anniversary, and I also watched House because it was celebrating its anniversary too.
Nice.
So those like the four most recent movies I watched. So two of them are rewatches and two of them were new. And it's fun to watch new movies, especially when they're great. But when you watch a new movie and it's not great, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But that's why I like to rewatch movies so much because it's like it's a safer bet. You know what you're going
Yeah.
into. Or if you're like reevaluating a movie, you already know what you're going into, and the only thing that's going from there is either it gets worse or better. So that's why I'm like rewatches are better. But when I watched the two new movies that I watched, I was like, okay, these are great. So time was not wasted because I'm always scared of wasting time. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up two good concepts there. Time talking about wasting time because that's the thing too that I have a. I mean, that's probably a big thing for a lot of people watching this, but making sure, like, I'm one of those people who has to like finish something. Like, if I start something, I try to finish it. Rarely do like TV shows are like a maybe out of that whole thing because I can watch an episode and be like, yeah, it's not really my thing. But with movies, it's like I started, I'm like, I gotta finish it to see if I get
Yeah.
something out of it. But yeah, but also you brought up the fact about something that I'm completely blanking on right now. Yeah, that's just that thought's completely gone now.
I
But
mean, when it comes to watching movies, I've watched a lot of movies, and it's like some of them are were a complete waste of my time. Like I remember I watched The Good Earth just to see Louise Reiner's Best Actress winning performance, and I remember I think about halfway through I 1.5 the movie because I was like, I this is hard to watch, but I'm already too deep, so let's just 1.5 it. And then at a certain point, I was like, we're gonna two times it now because it's getting even harder to watch. And it's like when you start something, you got to finish it. And that's how I feel with movies, which is why when I take the time to watch something, I'm like, you better be good, which is why, oh, I did see Bullet Train actually
oh,
yesterday.
okay, yeah, nice.
And yeah, that was another one that I was like, this is a waste of my time. Like,
Okay,
like, the reviews for that are like middling, and I had high hopes, and then going in, I was like, oh no, this is wrong. Which is why like that was 2 hours long, and I could feel every minute of that. And I was like, I could be playing a video game or watching something else right now. That's why I'm like, once again, time management. I'm like, gotta be worth my time.
and that's I mean that's totally fair. I mean, like that's the thing is like well, what we have to like start realizing, especially like if we're buying things too. In our case, well, I just spent money on that. Like you just watched Bullet Train, like you spent money on a ticket, right? And
Oh
so,
no,
oh yeah, you didn't.
I have the AMC. Like,
Oh well, you
yeah,
spent
technically you
money
spend
technically,
money, but like
right?
at the
But
same time, I'm always like, I gotta make sure watch so many movies in premium. That way, I don't feel like I spend money at all.
sure, yeah. But I mean, like, obviously, with our like what we do, buying movies, I like to blind buy a lot. So that's
Oh,
yeah, so that's
I
me.
mean, I just blind bought Labyrinth of Cinema from the director who did House because that was his last movie, and it's very hard to watch it. I think it's streaming on Mubi, but I was like, I don't want to subscribe for 7 days. That's why I was like, I'm just gonna hedge my bets and buy it. But blind buying, it can lead to some good results, but it can lead to some very disastrous results. I've sold a lot of my movies that I blind bought because I was like, this is hard, and recouping the money was even harder to do.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's the other thing too. But I actually kind of recall what we were talking about. You bringing up rewatches. That's another thing that I don't think is really talked about enough because I'm one of those people that likes to discover something like all the time.
Mhm.
And as much as like I just rewatched Jaws and I rewatched The Lord of the Rings last Christmas
I
because
always watch that every year.
yeah, and I try to watch those especially annually, but sometimes I just like forget that I'm like, oh yeah, it's like I'm just watching, I'm going down this rabbit hole of things that I have on my shelf that I haven't seen, and then all of a sudden you're like, I just want to watch something I know, like and that's kind of something I feel like needs to be talked about more, or I don't know. And then there's the polar opposite because some people are just like, that's all I watch is watch the same movie over and over again. So
I mean, with streaming services and all that, people always when they're flipping through it, they're like, ah, it's an old movie that I watched before, and it's like I'll just watch that instead of watching something new on the streaming service. And that's how I feel like with my movies. When I feel like watching a movie, I either go through my digital library or look through my cases because all these Blu-ray cases they're empty. because I really hate pulling them out, especially the ones that are on the other side of the room that are like very stacked over each other. So I have a case, I have multiple cases, and it's alphabetized, which is a pain. But like that way, when I want to watch a movie, I'm just like, I just look through, I look at all of these, and then I just go, okay, I want to watch that, and then I just go to the corresponding case, and I'm like, there we go. But like, I don't know, rewatching movies, as I said, it's just comforting knowing what you're gonna watch versus like the unknown. Like it took me forever to watch The Damned. I bought that in the fall Criterion sale of last year, and I just watched it now, so it's almost a year since I've owned it. And that's nothing new. I own a bunch of movies that I line bought and have not watched because I'm scared. But most of the time when I watch it, I feel very vindicated and feel like my time has been worth it, which is why I'm like, once again, you gotta weigh the options of new in the sense of that you watch it for the first time versus like rewatching, which is like very good. Like I could watch The Holiday and Shrek 2 forever, but it's like, you know, you're gonna get bored if you keep watching those. So you gotta put some new things into your diet. That way you get like a full nutritional like helping of all of the cinema that's out there.
Yeah, that adds a spice, and that's why that's probably why we enjoy the things that we do. Hopefully, but yeah. So those are some great watches. I have a few of those on my shelf that I still haven't seen myself. So yeah,
Oh, you know, speaking of shelves, I see behind you, you have your The Witch 4K from the second signing.
I
I think
just
I
got
saw
it.
you posted about it today. It's funny because I got my edition of that like early this week, but I still haven't opened it because there's a thing with me where I'm scared to open like the plastic on things. Like I have a bunch of Manta Lab like Blu-rays and 4Ks, and I'm so scared to open them because I'm like, am I gonna ruin them? Or if I ever want to resell in the future. But yeah, like I own all three Robert Eggers movies now. The Witch, I'm like, I think it's great, but not my favorite out of the three. But like, I'm just waiting for them to release a 4K of the North, not the Northman, the Lighthouse now, because
Yeah,
that's the only one now I don't have a 4K of.
I would assume that they're going to do something kind of like Midsommar. I think they're probably going to eventually put something out like
Oh
that.
yeah, that is a. Is that A24?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I not think it was A24 for a second there? Because I know the Northman is an A24, which is why
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
this big studio, more studio like movie. Yeah. So
I want to buy the Souvenir Part 1 and 2 from A24, but I'm just waiting.
I
Like
also
whenever.
have over there though somewhere.
Oh, you have it? How is it?
I haven't seen it yet, so I have it
Oh,
on
see,
the shelf.
I got the first Souvenir like part one very cheap, but then when I saw they had the double pack, I was like, I need to sell it. So I recently just sold it with a bunch of movies that I had duplicates of, and I was like, it's sad to see it go, but there's gonna be a double pack. So it's like what's that movie X that came out from
Yeah,
Ty West? Is
yeah,
that how you say his name?
he's got a second movie coming out with it. Yeah,
Yeah, Pearl. So I was trying to get it on Blu-ray in a good condition, and then I heard they were gonna make a 4K, so I was like, I'll just wait. But after seeing the Souvenir Part 1 and 2, I'm like, will they do a Blu-ray or 4K pack of both X and Pearl together since it's basically the same like storyline together? That's why I'm like A24. They're very tricky with when they release things. So it's like I don't want to keep double dipping on stuff.
I think they're gonna start doing this more in house than recent years. You know what I mean? Because like something like Midsommar or I mean even like last Black Man in San Francisco, which I have off here. Both are in these nice packages, but yeah, I think just slowly they're gonna start putting their catalog on both. But like you said, they're tricky because you know you don't know if they're gonna come out or not. So
Exactly. That's why I'm just like, I'm like, I like it better because I like their packaging. Packaging is very important when I spend money on movies because it's like some movies and like the companies distributing them, they get lazy. Like Little Women, when they release that Blu-ray, it's the blandest like cover artwork for such a great movie. And I'm just like, I wish someone, whoever is in charge of like the distributing of the physical copies, like or the I don't know, graphic designs. I just need people to have more like investment in these things because I'm like, these are products, and I'm like, some people I feel like are just like, boop, that's it, send it out. And I'm like, a lot of people are just like, that's it. I like the movie, so I'll buy it. But that's why I have a lot of great movies in here, but their artworks, I'm just like, don't like looking at this at all.
that's why it's sideways instead of facing.
Yeah.
So
But when I move them around, I do like looking at the covers, and I'm like, and then some of them I'm like, oh.
oh
Like some of the terrible movies that I own that I still like, they have amazing artworks, and I'm like, why did you get so much energy put into you, but not this other movie? It's insane.
yeah, there needs to be more commission stuff. I would like that. But those are some good recent watches and some fun topics. I'm sure a lot of people could explore down in the comment section if we're jumping further into that. But let's start off with the film journey. So, what is your earliest movie memory?
Mm, See, I thought about this before, but I was like, it's hard because when it comes to like movie I saw, I feel like the first one would either have to be Aladdin or Milan. When I was a kid, like because I grew up in Canada for the first like I would say like 5 years of my life, and then my family moved here to Washington. So it was very much like, well, how would I say it? Like North American centered with the cinema we watched. I mean, my family's Filipino, so there was always like Filipino stuff going on in the background. But I never paid attention to that because my parents wanted my sister and I to really like learn the English language. So we would always be watching things in English, like TV shows like the Teletubbies and Dragon Tales and all that.
Yes.
So, but the earliest like movie I can remember watching was either Mulan or Aladdin because those are Disney movies and they're the easiest things to put on kids. There's a bunch of other Disney movies we watch, but those two are the ones that stuck in my mind when it came to first watch. I know The Little Mermaid probably was in there too, but Aladdin, Mulan, they just seem like the movies that were probably one of the first because when I think about the earliest movie I can remember watching, it was one of those two. But when it comes to the first movie I saw in a theater, I remember it was the second, I think, Scooby-Doo movie, Monsters
Yeah.
Unleashed. Like, I still remember leaving the cinema on that being like, wow, that was a movie. And that still is a movie today. But like, I just remember being like awestruck by watching that in theaters, being like, wow, that was crazy. Like, monsters in reality. What? But yeah, those were the earliest movies I can remember watching.
Those are pretty nutty movies. But I mean, like especially Scooby Doo Monsters Unleashed. That I remember the VHS. I don't remember watching it in theaters. I probably did, but I do remember the VHS copy, um,
Like,
quite well. Yeah.
like I was we were very much VHS people. My parents, like that's what I'm saying, the Scooby-Doo Monsters Leash, that was like one of the earliest, like the only actually earliest memory of going to the theaters because my parents were like, there's no point in going to watch movies because it's like it will come out eventually for us to buy on VHS or to rent at Blockbuster. So it was like, okay, so we're just not gonna go to the movies. That's why I'm like, we had VHS copies for Milan and Aladdin and The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Little Mermaid. And my sister and I would just play those VCRs. And when we want to watch it again, we would rewind it. And that's such a crazy concept now that you would
Yeah, rewinding.
rewind the VCR. Because I remember doing it, but now I'm just like, that's so crazy that we legit hit the rewind button, waited for it to like stop making it sound. And then it'd be like, and I'd be like, okay, time to watch it again. But like, yeah, that's why I'm like, watching movies when I was younger, if it wasn't on a VHS copy or on TV, then I wasn't watching a movie, which like is crazy, but I get why my parents were very adverse to spending money to go watch a movie outside because it just wasn't in our financial reach at the time.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense too. I mean they have a point with just what you have access to. Because like now it's weird because thinking about obviously we're adults now, so we can spend our own money on our own things. But thinking about going to Blockbuster or just doing, I would assume, did you have like a family night, like a movie night, where you go to the Blockbuster, or is it just pretty random?
It would be pretty random. I mean, I guess it'd be like if we bought food outside, like a pizza from Papa Murphy's or something like that. We would go to Blockbuster, and then my parents would just go, "What's like a movie that's out that's new?" And we'll watch it if we deem it good enough for you and your sister to watch as well. That's why I'm like, a lot of movies I feel like they watched without us. Like, I didn't know they had Titanic on VHS, but they never showed us that. But then
Yeah,
when I remember in like middle school when I was going through like our like old movie collection that was just in the back of my parents like thing. I was like, why do we have a VHS copy of Titanic and I never saw it before? Which leads me to believe that there were a lot of movies they watched. They just didn't want us around when they were watching them. And I'm just like, interesting, very interesting to that. But yeah, that's why I'm like, it's so because we could have watched a lot of movies, not just kids' movies, but clearly they did not want us to know. Like, I never even saw a Terminator movie until like 2 years ago, and that's why I'm like, there were a lot of holes I need to fix myself because my parents knew them and they watched them, but they just clearly did not think my sister and I were like able to watch it because of our age.
sure. Yeah. What was like that? I mean, besides being 2 years ago with like Terminator, was there like a shift like when VHSs were turning into DVDs or anything like that? Like when did you see a shift in your own like collecting, like getting interested in movies in general yourself?
Well, as I said, when I was younger, we weren't really watching movies other than anime movies. So, like, there wasn't really a pull to watch movies for me. So, the closest thing to movies was reading a book because, reading a book, you read the words and then you imagine it in your head how it looks like. So, when I was young, I was the most avid reader. I have four reading medals from elementary school. I would have had five, but it sticks with me because two of my friends, like both won that year, and only one of them beat me by half a point in the reading logs. And I'm like, I could have had five if I just read another book. But like, it haunts me. It haunts me because it's so close. But yeah, I would love reading books because like my mind would just race and see the images myself, and it would be like I would be watching my own movie. And that's why when I was young, I wouldn't stop reading. When I come home, I would be reading, and like at night, my parents would be like, go to sleep, and then I'd be like one of those kids with a flashlight under my like blankets reading a book, or like trying to like put it in the moonlight being like, I need to read this more because I want to know what happens, that way I can see it in my mind. That's why I'm like, for me, I was very visual books. That's why I just kept reading books, like every new book. I remember in, I think it was sixth grade when the last Harry Potter book came out. I had never read a Harry Potter book at that time, but or seen, I think I only seen the first like few Harry Potter movies that were out. I forget how long ago that was, but I'm pretty sure at least one and two were out at that time. But
2002
I
ish,
read,
2003. Yeah.
yeah, like it was like around, when did I graduate elementary school? Like it was like the late 2000s. So like at least the first four, yeah, at least the first 4 or 5 were out. So like I watched the movies but never read the book. So when they released Deathly Hollows on the book, I said to myself, let's just read all the books. And in a week, one book for every day, basically. I read it straight through. And the first few, I already knew how they looked like, but there was more in the book. But like the last ones I haven't seen, I was like, I imagined it myself. That's why when I saw the movies, when they didn't like completely gel, I was like, this is weird because it's not what I imagined.
Right.
Like, as I said, like from very young all the way into high school, I was a very book oriented person. I didn't really pay much mind to movies. When I got older, I got to see like what is that Will Ferrell movie about him going into the past, time traveling? It was weird.
Is it Stranger Than Fiction?
No, it was like it came out the same time as Up. I forget what it's called. It was a weird movie. I can't remember what it was, but like
Hmm.
I remember watching that and then Up and then Tangled and Avatar. Those were like after watching Monsters, Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed in theaters. That was like the next phase of, oh, these are movies I could see in theaters. And then I still, even though watching those movies in theaters, I wasn't like, cinema, yes, I love it.
Right.
I was just like, this is cute, this is fun, this is entertaining for me to watch and spend time doing. But it really wasn't until the collision of reading and watching movies was when The Hunger Games was announced to come out, because I had read the Hunger Games book and I was very a big fan of it. And when they announced that a movie was happening about it, I was like, "Oh, this is crazy!" Because I read the book. This is gonna be great. And then they announced Jennifer Lawrence into it, and then I was really getting to Jennifer Lawrence at that time because I was like, we need to bulk up on this girl who's gonna play Katniss Everdeen. So I watched X-Men First Class, and I was like, oh, she was good in that. And then when the movie came out, I was like, oh, I thought Jennifer Lawrence was great in The Hunger Games, and I thought that movie was great at the time. Rewatched it recently. The first one, too much shaky cam, could have used work, but I
Yeah.
still like that movie. I still champion it. And two is like almost a masterpiece in my opinion, but the rest is like garbage. But like, but like at that moment, I was like, Jennifer Lawrence is that girl. She is like an amazing actress, and I just need to watch everything she's been in. But like, I remember the next year, not was it the next year? Yeah, that next year, I think Silver Linings Playbook came out with Catching Fire, and then I watched Silver Linings Playbook, and I was like, wow, this Bradley Cooper guy, he's pretty amazing. This Robert De Niro person is like pretty great too. So I was like, not only watching all of Jennifer Lawrence's new movies, but looking to her past. And when every time I'd watch a new movie and there'd be someone in it, I'd be like, wow, this person's great. And I'd look into their filmography too and be like,
Nice.
oh wow, like American Hustle really was, I think, in 2013, the turning point for me because it had Amy Adams in it too and Jeremy Renner. And at that point, I'd already seen the first Avengers movie. That was like the like cinematic moment for me in a theater. I was like, that's another point where I was like, wow, this is a moment, and this is why people go to the movies to watch something like great like this. But when I watched American Hustle, that was the point where I said, you know, these people are all great, like this cast. So maybe I should really deep dive into their work. So from there, I just trickled where I would watch their movies, see other people that was working with them in those movies, from directors to like actors, and I would watch a lot of interviews and read interviews with them, and it would just spiral off from there for me to watch. So like I would say my high school period, I was mainly focused on watching movies from the 2010s, which were the present times, and the 2000s and maybe 90s. But I told myself, there's no point in going past like the 80s maybe, because it's too old. I don't think it's going to be relevant for me to watch, and it might be outdated. But I remember in college, in college, I got hooked onto Criterions because I somehow, I don't know how Amazon did it, but Amazon does that thing where it's like, you might like this, but they recommended My
Yeah,
Own Private Idaho with Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix. And
that's
that was the first
fantastic.
ever
Yeah,
Criterion I ever bought because they recommended it. And I watched it and I was like, this is great. And then I remember them recommending Mulholland Drive. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I was like, it's from the weird, like, people that have a C on their
weird
like
people with the C. Yeah,
yeah, I was like, what is this C? But like I remember I bought Mulholland Drive, I watched it, and I said, what was that? That was amazing. Like this was unlike anything I've ever seen. But it was weird because I was in my second year of college at that point in 2000, I think it was 17. And then I was like, maybe I should see if this company has more movies. And then that's when I was like, oh, like they have a long spanning movies from like not only different time periods but different countries. And it was funny because when I discovered that, the Barnes and Noble sale had just started.
mm,
So I remember going downtown in Seattle from the light rail after going to school at UW, and then going down being like, oh, what movies do they have? And I remember like among those first movies I actually bought was like Stagecoach, because The
nice.
Hateful Eight was coming out, and I remember Quentin Tarantino talking about how Stagecoach was a big influence. So I was like getting that, and then getting Lady Snowblood because he was like that was Kill Bill,
Bill. Yeah,
like inspiration, and then getting Black Narcissist because Aubrey Plaza was talking about how Black Narcissist and the Decameron were inspirations for the Little Hours, and I was like, that's why that first haul I was just grabbing everything that people like mentioned, because I was like, it's weird that these people mention these movies, never heard of them before, but now they're in front of me, and it's like it must be like a sign that we should watch them and buy them, because it's like, and mind you, I was a college student working at Michael's, and I was like, is this what you want to spend your money on? And I was like, yes, it is, because you know it's fascinating, these movies, and it's better to own them. That way you can watch them whenever you want, rather than trying to rent them. Because I borrow a lot of movies from the local library here in Washington, in the King County district. They have an incredible like library of movies. They really just, if you want a movie and it's not even in your library, they will transfer it from, like, if it's like on the other side of the county, they will transfer all the way to your branch. That way you can watch it. That's why I'm able to watch movies that I don't even want to buy. I just want to see how it is.
yeah,
But
good resource.
yeah, it is, local libraries are very good resources, and it's very sad when people don't either utilize it or it's not really well funded. But it's like it's like when I buy movies, it's like these are the ones where I'm like, I will rewatch these eventually, and I hope maybe I can show some people. I showed my friends a lot of the movies I own, and it's like I remember showing my cousin's House for the first time, and they were like, "What the heck is
What
this?"
the
But
hell
it's
is this?
great.
Yeah.
And I remember showing my friend Personal Shopper with Kristen Stewart, and they were like, "This is such a weird movie, but I love it." And it was like,
Yeah,
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 exactly. But there's so many movies where I'm like, these are great in the Criterion Collection, and then it really just spiraled from there. Because the first old movie I would say I watched was His Girl Friday with Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. And from there I was like, okay, let's get into Cary Grant. And from there, the me watching movies in the golden age of Hollywood started. And I was like, these movies are actually pretty great, and I can see why like they have restored a lot of the old movies, and a lot of people still talk about them now because they are foundational when it comes to like making movies stay. Like, what's it called, Seven Samurai by Akira Kurosawa, like it is the template. I'm not the biggest fan of the movie. I can see why it's great, but I'm not running to watch it. I own it because it's like the second movie that you can buy, basically, since Grand Illusion isn't a Blu-ray or 4K. But like when I watch a lot of the older movies, I'm like, these are very foundational, and I can see why like filmmakers today like really use it and all that. But yeah, like, yeah, so basically, long story short, in 2012 is when everything turned with me with The Hunger Games and Jennifer Lawrence. But it's crazy because when I think about the first ever physical copy that I bought with my own money, it was Frozen.
Nice. Yeah.
Like I didn't even pick it out myself because I didn't drive and I didn't want to walk all the way to the local Walmart, which would have been like a half an hour walk. So I asked my sister who could drive at the time to buy it for me, and I would just give her cash. And she just bought like the most like okay edition of it. Like the
Right.
slipcover kind of was like, and I still own it, but it's like the slipcover is kind of falling apart. And I'm like, that's sad, but I do have a 4K steelbook, so it's fine. But yeah, it's just crazy that Frozen and then the Lego movie were the first two movies I ever bought. Like it's weird considering all the movies I own now.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back all the way to your like Aladdin and Milan, right? Like
Oh
that.
yeah, I
It
own both of
makes
those
sense.
on 4K
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
are amazing.
Well, it
Like,
makes sense. It makes sense. It's all connected, and I love how you went down that path of like just like Jennifer Lawrence, for instance, like that catalyst almost of just going like, oh, De Niro. It's like, oh, that person's interesting, and then just kept going down all these different rabbit holes and like that.
you really go down a rabbit hole when you're going through actors, especially. I feel like directors are a special case because not every director is as dynamic enough for you to want to dive into their work. But with actors, it's more visual, so you can see the work they're putting out for you. That's why I really, when it comes to cinema, I really do love acting because I don't know, I feel like people are putting themselves in the forefront in the camera, and it really is hard to expose yourself in that kind of light and also to transform in a way. I feel like people really love when people like change their face and all that, but I feel like transformation can be done in a not just with your like changing your facial features and all that. It's like this past year, Penelope Cruz was nominated for Parallel Mothers with Pedro
Yeah,
Almodovar, and I feel like honestly, she or Kristen Stewart should have won that Oscar because like Kristen was doing something great, but Penelope was doing something where it was like she wasn't hiding behind makeup or anything. It was just a person that was real, and she was grounding herself and showing you a person who's exposing themselves and like their fears and all that. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays think that acting is just like, oh, we're gonna give you this like transformation where we hide behind makeup, and it's like we're gonna give you a speech, and then it's like, oh, didn't we do great? And people are like, yes, and it's like I get tired of that because a lot of them are weak. That's why I don't like Jessica's win. I love Jessica, but it's like that win. I'm just like that's kind of, in my opinion, as bad as Meryl Streep winning for the Iron Lady. Can we just stop with this like trend of getting
this
both male and
pageantry
female
kind of.
actors
Yeah,
like awards for this? Because it's like it's tiring, and there's more deserving people. It's when Gary Oldman won that Oscar for The Darkest Hour. I was like, this is a lazy win. Like I would have preferred if they gave it to Timothy Chalamet for Call Me by Your Name.
I wish he won definitely because that is something like that movie. Like I just talked about it actually on my channel. I was talking about favorite summer movies, and I brought up that film. I was like, Call Me by Your Name, is still a movie that like I rewatch pretty frequently, and I'm like that's like that. I remember when that year came out too, because that is also the year that Blade Runner 2049 came out, and I remember in at during the Oscars, I used to, I don't know if you know Alamo Drafthouse.
But there's not one anywhere near here.
Yeah. Well, there's a pretty nice one where I'm at, and we do like an Oscar party where we dress up in black tie suits, and we go to the theater and we watch the Oscars and just drink and stuff. But I remember that particular conversation having being like, it's like I know we weren't talking about those films in particular, maybe for a few things, but I said, you know what, in 20 years from now, what are the movies like this year that are going to be remembered? In my head, I was like, Call Me by Your Name is going to be remembered, and Blade Runner 2049 is going to be remembered out of that whole bunch, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
we'll see how time tells. But yeah,
The only things I remember from that year were yeah, Blade Runner 2049, Call Me by Your Name, and Lady Bird.
yes, that's
And
another one that'll be remembered.
what was Get Out that year? I'm pretty sure Get Out was that year
20,
as
I
well.
think Get Out might have been the year before, but if it was,
Mm, I feel like it is because the original screenplay category, I remember I wanted Greta Gerwig, but I'm pretty sure Jordan Peele won that year for Get Out for original screenplay. But yeah, that year I really do like that year.
that was a great year. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I just feel like choices. My mind's like, I think Three Billboards was that year as well because I'm pretty sure that's the year where I Tanya was happening. So you see, like when I think about actresses, it connects me to the best pictures, and I'm like, okay, there we go. It's all coming back to me now. But like, I just think that that year had a lot of good things going for it, but at the end of the day, I feel like
It
a
was
lot of
pretty
choices were
crowd.
safe, and
Yeah, they were safe. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of choices were safe. It's like this year with the original screenplay. I was like, worst person in the world is that movie. It should have gotten more nominations, but you know, Neon put its weight behind Drive My Car, which is a great movie. I finally watched it the
I haven't
day
seen it yet, so don't.
I watched it the day before the Criterion came out on HBO Max. I was like, let's finally watch it. So I sat down, watched all 3 hours, and I was like, oh, this was great. But I still feel like worst person in the world, like, should have at least been in there too, because it was just as great, if not better, than
Yeah.
Drive My Car. But like, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people like to play it safe, and I'm like, I like it when there's chaos, like how this year Lady Gaga wasn't in, and I was like, because she didn't deserve to be in. Like that was bad, and people who were saying it was good, I was like, I don't know what you're watching, but especially in that last third, I was like, this is becoming caricature and it's becoming I can't follow you anymore, girl. But I would have loved to have seen the actress from The Worst Person in the World, Renata, I can't pronounce her last name, or Alana Haim from Licorice Pizza. Like those two, I would have kicked out Nicole and Jessica and put them in because they were doing such amazing work, especially Alana. Like I still remember that scene watching that movie in theaters and her backing up in that huge truck down the hill. And then I was like, wow, this was no talking. It was just facial acting from her. And it really conveyed like what she was feeling. And then when the boys were like cheering and everything and her facial reaction afterwards, I was like, this is acting. Like no words needed. We're just using our face. I was like, this is the highest level of acting, conveying emotion with no words. I was like, yes. And I saw the her in concert recently, and her sister was like, oh, she was in a movie, and I was like, yes, she was, and she should have been nominated. I screamed that so loud. I was like, yeah, Alana. I was like, you're that girl. But yeah, I just find with awards, especially, I love awards season. I love the drama of trying to vie for spots and be recognized by the whole industry and all that. But it really is sad when deserving people get shut out either because of like genre bias or because people just don't watch the movie. It's like when I really loved Keira Knightley and Colette like a few years ago, but no one watched that movie, and I'm like, because it was with Bleecker Street, and that distribution company has no power whatsoever to spend money on, and it's like it's sad when it's like if you don't get the screeners out, you don't get it, the word of mouth out to people, or you're not popping at film festivals enough, like you're dead, and it's like
Yeah.
that's sad. But sometimes it can lift things up, like Call Me by Your Name or Minari. It's Minari. It's like they pop off in the right way, and it's like good for them. But I feel like there are a lot of movies and performances and things that just aren't seen because it's like there's not enough promotion. It's like once again, there's this movie called What We Had with what's her name? Two-time Oscar winner for Million Dollar Baby, Hilary Swank.
Yeah,
It's
Hillary.
Hilary
Yeah.
Swank and Michael Shannon and Blythe Danner, and I think it's like a beautiful little family movie. And I'm like, the performances in this are so good that they probably could have gotten their own nominations just for acting, but because no one saw the movie, it's like this movie with like multiple Oscar winners and like Tony winners, like was just forgotten and swept under the rug. And I was like, it's sad when that happens because I'm like, a lot of great work is done better than the ones that are nominated, but because the ones that are nominated are flashier and like they're being promoted, it's like they get to be the ones that are the chosen and not the others. That's why I'm like, it's sad because I really love cinema, but when I see current day cinema and how things are like put in place to be the thing, it's like, but do you really deserve to be the thing? I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's an interesting point too. This is, I mean, you're talking about a lot of the actors and actresses who nominated for these things. Like, what are some of your favorite actors and actresses? Do you have like a list that you, or is it just dependent on like what you're feeling or what do you want to
I
watch?
do have a list more actresses and actors. I feel like male actors, a lot of them are just so nowadays, especially like the new people coming up, a lot of them are just so bland. They don't have character to them. They don't really doesn't really feel like they're giving it. It's like Timothy Chalamet. Timothy Chalamet. He's a great example of someone who is doing it. Like he's really bringing it. But there are a lot of people like Tom Holland. I love Tom Holland, but like watching The Impossible, I said yes, he is going places. And then he got the Marvel role, and I was super happy for him. And then over like Asa Butterfield or whatever his name is from Sex Education. And I was like, aha, now we're going to have the popularity and the acting. But now I'm like, where are we, Tom? Where are we? It's like Cherry. what is this going on? I watched Uncharted from Redbox recently, and I was like, Tom,
I haven't seen it. I don't want to.
it's I borrowed it because it was free because my T-Mobile thing. But I was like, it's sad because I'm like the potential was there with the Impossible, and then now it's gone. And then when I watch like Asa Butterfield in Sex Education, I'm like, you are flourishing in a way, and that's why I'm like when I think of like Saoirse Ronan, how she was supposed to be the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff. She turned it down on Age of Ultron because she said I didn't like the script, and now I'm like she has 3 more Oscar nominations to her name, and a lot of her movies I think about more than any Marvel movie except for the first Avengers. I'm like, it just is sad when I think about when it comes to male actors. Like I recently saw Nope, and the actor Brandon, is it Pereira? I don't know how to say his last name, but he really wants to be in the Marvel movie cinematic universe, the TV show or movie. And recently, someone online was talking about how, what do you expect to get out of this other than popularity? Are you thinking you're going to move the needle in terms of providing anything really of value to cinema? And I'm like, the thing is with Marvel movies, I'm like, not all, the majority of them don't really have weight or will be remembered. No one talks about Thor: The Dark World. No one talks about Guardians of the Galaxy 2. No one's really talking about Black Widow anymore. And it's like most of them fade. And it's like, so all you're really getting when you go into those movies is popularity. You're not on Avengers 1 or even Endgame dash like Infinity War. So, or even Guardians of the Galaxy 1. So I'm like, you go into those things spending a lot of your time to do other projects to hone your skill for popularity. And it's like a majority of male actors really just want to be in like a big blockbuster. That way they become famous. And it's like when you ask a lot of them about, oh, what movies got you into or performances, it's always movies from the early 2010s or 2000s, and that's it. And it's like, my mind's like, it comes across as you don't watch movies because it's like you're not doing your homework. That's why when you actually listen to most female actors, they go way back into time when they're referencing things that they watched and what inspires them. But when male actors today, it's like the newer ones who are like in their 20s or early 30s, it's like, I love that movie from the late 2000s. And it's like, okay, but it's like, or when they say things like, oh yeah, the great Robert De Niro, it's like the most basic things. Like I remember when when Tom was talking about Marissa Tomei, he's like, oh yeah, I love like Aunt May, she's from My Cousin Vinny with Joe Pesci. And it's like, okay, but can you name anything else she was in? Because that's the only thing he listed for her. And I was like, she's great in the bedroom. She's great in The Wrestler.
Wrestler, yeah.
Like she has a lot of good movies. And it's like, but it doesn't seem like you actually scratch the surface of what people do. You don't go in depth and go down the rabbit hole to actually learn. That's why when he was with Jake Gyllenhaal doing the press tour for the second Spider-Man movie, and Jake Gyllenhaal was like, "Oh, I would love to see how Pedro Almodovar would do Spider-Man." And he goes, "Who's Pedro Almodovar?" And I'm like, "This is a guy who's been working since like what the at least like 80s, I believe." And it's like you have had to have heard of at least one of his movies at one point, like especially since he's won at least, I'm pretty sure, 2 Oscars for best foreign film. That's why I'm like you have to have, especially since he like is with Zendaya, and I'm just like she knows who he is, and she clearly does her research, which is why I'm like it's weird to see like Tom being like I don't know what that is, and it's like it really tells me that most male actors today, the newer ones, don't do the research, and it's like they're just doing it because they want to become a figure like Tobey Maguire and Spider-Man. And it's like, but he did other things before then too. So it's like, are you doing this for the art of it, or are you doing it for the fame and money of it? And that's the problem I find with most male actors. But with female actors, like living people like Anne Hathaway or Nicole Kidman, I'm just like, they're doing the work. They do the whole one for them, one for me thing where it's like, oh, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it. That way I can make this weird project that I want to do that actually displays. Like Birth from Nicole Kidman, that is one of the most amazing movies I've ever saw. Like her performance is dynamite. And I'm glad that it's gotten traction now, since like in the early 2000s when it premiered, no one watched it and no one liked it. Like over time, it got the love it deserved. And I just feel like, I don't know, I can't really see any current day male actors doing it. Like I know there are people who are like older who are doing it. I love Colin Firth. Like I think he should have won his Oscar for a single man instead of The King's Speech, and that way that year Jesse Eisenberg could have won for The Social Network. But like I just feel like a lot of people who actually do delve into cinema and actually have done the research, they're either in their like 40s now, like Ethan Hawke, 40s or 50s, like Ethan Hawke, because he was usually talking about how, oh, I did Moon Knight because that's what Paul Newman would have done. He would have put the food on the table. He would have just done it just to get that paycheck. And I'm like, fair, fair. I'm like, love Paul Newman, but it's like I feel like if you ask majority of young actors today, they'd be like, Paul Newman, what movie? And they would take them a minute to be like,
the nose. That's what I think of.
like when I think about Paul Newman, I think about like The Sting for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah, Hustler.
Oh, and Can Hofton Roof. That is fantastic. But yeah, I just love going back into the history of movies, whether it be a director or an actor, and like somehow incorporating that back into current day like movies. It's like the new Beyonce album came out, and like she takes music from the 90s and makes it current. And it's like that's why I feel like cinema should be today in both the writing, directing, and the acting. Like you should be looking at the past and seeing what works so well and incorporating it into what you're doing now. That way you can make it fresh, but still taking things that worked. That way you can basically like improve upon it and like adapt it into the current day things. Cause I don't know, a lot of people think that movies past like below the 70s are outdated and they don't work. But I'm like, no, the formula is there and people still use the formula. The thing is that they use like the basis of the formula, but don't take any of the other good parts of it to make it work today. That's why I'm like, I think rom-coms today aren't popping anymore because it's like they're not following that era of like rom-coms and screwball comedies from the 50s and 40s. And it's like the 90s worked so well because they kind of did that. But now it's like no one knows how to do it, especially with phones. Like I feel like phones are a big hurdle when it comes to movies nowadays. Because it's like, how do we incorporate a cell phone into the plot? Because it's like, oh, I didn't know. Well, you had a cell phone, so you can like look it up. That's why I'm like, cell phones. Modern day cell phones are an enemy to, in my opinion, storytelling. Because a lot of people, when they watch it, they're like, well, why did they just look it up? Or why did they call the police? And it's like, that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
I mean, like you're talking about that, like that makes me think of like You've Got Mail, which is like a really great response, like obviously adaptation of Little
Shop Around the Corner,
right? Which, but like by that time, like that utilized technology in a way that obviously adapted to the time. Like you said, it's using a formula, but adapting to like what was going on at the time. Obviously, there's something that could be done like that, but like now that you're thinking about it, it's like, well, we have the access of like Google and like on our phones and the amount of things that we can do. And like you said, it is interesting to think about because, there are a lot of kind of almost like dead genres now because they're kind of hard to replicate with modern technology, or at least think about in the concept wise. You just have to like reinvent the wheel a little bit. So
yeah, the thing is, I feel like a lot of them can be tinkered to today. Like a lot of people love doing remakes of movies, and it's like a lot of times they don't work. And it's like because I feel like first they forget to get the essence of what made the original great, but also sometimes people try to stick too much to the original that it's like you're not putting anything new. So why would we watch this when we can watch the original? It's very hard. It's very hard, which is why I'm almost like, can we stop with the remakes and the reboots and just try investing in like original like ideas? I know original ideas are scary because people are like, there's no basis to if it's gonna work or not. But it's like you gotta take a chance because those are what the chance is what made those movies in the first place. And I feel like that's what a lot of the the money, the executives are like missing. That's why I like with this whole like HBO Max Discovery thing that just went down. I'm like, this is pretty scary in my opinion because I'm like, Warner Brothers owns a lot of movies, and it's like under like the current CEO, I'm like, could you even get like the older movies to be redistributed through like someone like a Criterion or a Kino Lorber or something like that? If like he's very much into, if it's not making a profit for me, it's not gonna work. Because I'm like, I feel like some movies don't even make a profit until like years and years later. That's why I'm like, what's it called that movie, The Room with Tommy Wiseau? I'm pretty sure that was a flop when that came out, but like people love to watch that for midnight screens. Yeah, to like make fun of it and have fun. But it's like that, and like a more recent example is Cats. Like
I watched in theaters, by the way, and I had a very insane experience with that movie.
I felt like I was going through it, and I was like, "What is happening?"
I loved it though.
By the time it ended, I was like, "That was cinema."
That was exactly.
I was like, For better or worse, that was cinema.
Yeah, that actually, that's a really funny memory of mine because I went to the Alamo and it was more or less kind of like a Rocky Picture Horror Show, so you can interact with the movie, even
I still
though
haven't watched that yet. I
it
need that's another movie I need to
so
watch.
that's a great one. But like, so everyone could interact obviously with the
Mhm.
movie, because obviously I mean, even if all of us are watching this for the first time, most of us are like, we know what we're watching. And,
Mhm.
and so everyone was just having literally the best time of their lives watching Cats. Like just anytime like Judy Dench would pop up on the screen, we'd start chanting Dench, 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 or like, then like anytime I would see like human hands, like, someone would shout like hands, human hands, and then like it just, I don't know, and it was just one of my favorite movie memories I had, like going to the theaters. But I mean, that's the thing is like, these are some things that like, these are recent discoveries. I mean, even though that's something that's only a couple years ago, but like now it's a cult movie, even though it's like what, 3 years old now.
That's a long time. The pandemic really sped us forward in time, and I'm like,
Yeah,
3 years?
yeah,
That's
right.
crazy.
Um, so I want to rope back around to, you were talking about some of those favorite actors and actresses, but what about some of those directors that you follow? Do you have any favorite directors as of like right now, or ones that you followed along with on your journey?
Oh yes, like I mean, let me pull up my letterbox because like, like in general, when it comes to general directors, like of all directors living or dead, like I gotta give it up. Like I'm pretty sure my top three are Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock, and Woody Allen, for better or for worse. Like I know two of those people are very like monstrous in what they were doing,
Sure.
but it's like
Yeah.
you gotta admit they put out the bops. Like Alfred Hitchcock knew how to
Bob.
make
Yeah.
like that's how I
Bob.
refer to
I
them
like
as
it.
like he made so many great thrillers and dramas that I'm like, oh, he's a monster. Especially like recently, Dakota Johnson was like, yeah, my grandma Tippi Hedren would tell me stories, and it's like he was a legit monster to her, and it was like, yeah, he was a monster, but like the birds did turn out pretty fine for the most part, and Marnie was good, so it's like, yes, but I hate it. But it's like, and it's like when you look at Woody Allen, it's like he's a monster because it's like, why would you adopt this daughter? And then it's like, and then it's like the sexual harassment of your other children, and it's like, but the way his mind snapped when Diane Keaton told him was talking to him in the past, and she was all like, women are good at talking too. It's like they have dialogue, blah blah blah, and then that changed his perspective on how to write women. And then when you look at all his movies, the women are the most dynamic characters, and it's
Most
like,
interesting. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, it's like I can't knock him for making great work, but it's like he's a bad person. But that's why I watch a lot of his movies, and I'm like, I have to hate him, but like Bullets Over Broadway, or like a Mighty Aphrodite, or like a Midnight in Paris, or Vicky Cristina Barcelona to Annie Hall, or Manhattan Murder Mystery. It's like he's putting out like amazing movies, and the actors in them are having so much fun like doing it. And it's
Yeah.
like I can't I have to be mad, but at the same time, it's like I will hide my face. It's like the guy from Mean Girls when they're having the assembly and he has that hoodie on and the
Yeah.
glasses.
The
That's me watching a Woody Allen movie and be like,
don't look
off
at me.
this.
That's
Yeah, that's why I felt when I watched the most recent one, A Rainy Day in New York or whatever, because I was like, I support Elle Fanning and Selena Gomez and Timothy Chalamet and Jude Law, and I was like, I will watch this movie, and I was like, don't we
you go to
no.
the theater with the hood, you're like,
Oh
don't,
no, that
don't
didn't come
leave.
out in theater, but I was watching it in the way. But I was like, I'm kind of liking it, but I'm gonna keep myself like
Yeah.
hidden.
And
But like, I also really like David Lynch. Like his movies are confusing, but it's like, uh, Martin Scorsese is clearly amazing. My favorite movie from him is The Age of Innocence. He said that's his like most violent movie. What he really means is like emotionally, and I'm like, yeah, because I don't feel that like violence going on in any of his movies like emotionally. Maybe Casino, but that was more physical to be honest. In Casino, I love Billy Wilder because he's just a fantastic. When it comes to older directors, I think him and Howard Hawks are like the best.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Billy Wilder, his movies, they're just amazing. Like, I think people need to watch The Major and the Minor more, and also 1, 2, 3, because 1, 2, 3 is a hilarious like satire on capitalism. And I'm like, you wouldn't expect that to come out from a director who's making this American movie, but yet it's like here we are, and it's one of the most funny movies he's ever made. Double Indemnity recently came out on Criterion, and it was like I was like, yes, love this. And it's like once again, there's a lot of great things from older directors like Billy Wilder and Howard Hawks, and Vincent Minnelli even, or someone like that. But it's like when it comes to modern day people, I really love a Pedro Almodovar or even a David Cronenberg. Recently saw Crash, I think it was last year before the
Oh my,
Criterion came out.
I saw it too last year.
Like it was like I remember watching for the first time on my laptop, and I was like, first of all, this should have been on like a movie theater screen at the very least, or at least the TV because the Criterion hadn't come out yet. And I was like, dang, I was like, this is art, this is wow. And then when I was reading the things about it, I was like, oh, the book had him crashing into Elizabeth Taylor and killing her. I was like, you adapted this pretty well because that would not have played well in this movie. But like, there are a lot of great directors today that are still working, but I find a lot of them, when I'm reading the interviews or watching interviews, are very dissatisfied with the state of cinema now. And it's like, I feel for them, which is why you don't see them really making movies as much. Pedro Almodovar loves to make movies, and he does it in Spain. And that's why like he doesn't go to America, because he's like, America sucks and their filmmaking is like very for profit. And it's like it hinders the artistic process in making movies. That's why he stays away from America and just stays in Spain with his little like troupe of actors of Penelope Cruz and Antonio Banderas and the rest of them there. And that's why like a lot of people in America, especially actresses like Angelina Jolie and Tilda Swinton's, have been very successful because of the Human Voice short film that they did together. But they want to work with Pedro, but it's like they don't speak Spanish, so they're like unless he's making an English movie, which I'm pretty sure he is with Kate Blanchett, like coming up soon. So that's gonna be. I feel like Angelina Jolie's looking at me like that should have been me, girl, to be in that movie. Because once again, Pedro Almodovar, him and like Todd Haynes are two people who have kind of really replicated the things that Douglas Sirk was doing in his melodramas, like All That Heaven Allows and Written on the Wind and Magnificent Obsession and what's the other one? Imitation of Life. Those four movies from him, I'm like, they're all excellent. And I feel like Almodovar and Haynes are the only two that have watched his movies and other melodramas of the 40s and 50s and were like, this is a really great template for what we can do today. And whether they're recreating the time period of those movies or just putting it into modern day movies, it really works for me. I love A Carol from Todd Haynes. I love Safe. I love Far From Heaven. And it's like, I even like I'm Not There. It's not the strongest movie, but I'm Not There is pretty good still. And it's like these two directors, like Pedro has technically, I mean, he technically has two Oscars, but you know how the foreign like category goes. It goes to the country, not the director, and that's weird. So technically he has two, but technically not. And Todd Haynes, like he was like missed from Carol entirely, and that was snubbed for Best Picture. And I'm just like, these are two directors who I'm like, these are amazing people, but it doesn't seem like the populace general audience like knows who they are, because they're more inclined to watch something that's mainstream and that will just like entertain them for a short while. That's why watching Bullet Train the other day, I was like, these are the most tired, like haha funny moments, and it wasn't really done anything story wise. Like that movie, when it was revealing things, they were like, twist, and I'm like, but you didn't build that up. There was no way the audience could find that without you explaining it to them. So it's like this isn't really something that's good. And I was just sitting there hearing people laugh, like, yeah, Brad Pitt got hit in the head with that coffee pot in slow motion, and it was like, is this where we've kind of devolved to when it comes to especially like blockbuster filmmaking? That's why online people get mad at Steven Spielberg for like criticizing him and Martin Scorsese for criticizing the state of cinema. But I'm like, but you gotta admit, like even Steven Spielberg is like the one who created the blockbuster. Like his movies like Jaws and E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, they were the basis for what a blockbuster should be. And it's somehow mutated into this thing where it's like everything has to connect together, or it's like yes, this little like thing all made on a soundstage on green screen. Like it really annoys me when people don't shoot on location when they can. Like I just watched the third episode of the Sandman show that's on Netflix. It's a great show so far. But like there's a scene where they're at the church and I was looking, I was like, this is a green screen. Like you try to hide it and it looks good, but staring at it long enough, I was like, no, I can see the outline of the actors behind it. And I'm like, was it that much just to go to a church and like film this? That's why with the new Cassian Andor show, they were like, yeah, we filmed a lot of this on location. And it was like, yeah, because how hard is it to, spend the money to fly the actors and the crew out, do it, and then just have the, VFX people like put in the ship and the things. And that's why, like, when I'm looking at modern day stuff too, the CGI is looking not good. And it's because the visual effects people are being worked too much, not paid, not treated right. And I'm like, so you're not even giving like a good looking product. That's why I'm like, when people really are defending modern day movies, it's like that have a lot of CGI. I'm like, but it doesn't look good because the people are not feeling like putting all their work in because they're overworked. So it's like you're not getting a good looking product at the very least. That's why I'm like, I would rather just watch. I really do. It's like music these days. Not a lot of music is great in my opinion, but like that's why I always just go watch older movies from like the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or the 50s because I'm like, even if I haven't watched it before, I'm pretty sure it has more quality than a lot of the stuff that's coming out now. And that's sad, but like I don't know. Not a lot of new directors are popping up. I know there's like a Jordan Peele, like a Greta Gerwig, or even the Daniels who made Everything Everywhere All at Once. But I feel like not enough are popping up because studios aren't interested in giving people a chance. And it's like the Russo brothers recently with their annoying movie, The Gray Man, they were like, theaters are so like for the rich people and no one can afford to go to a movie theater more. It should be all about streaming and blah blah blah. And I was like, I don't know where y'all coming from because
Mhm.
especially if you go to like a matinee on a weekend, it will be cheap. That's why I'm like when I had to pay for movies when I was in college, like I would movie jump. I would just like
Yeah.
no, and use my phone and be like, "What's the theater?" Or just walk around being like, where's the title?" And I would do it like that because I'm like I was so invested to watch movies that even if I couldn't afford it, I'd be like, I will watch it one way or another. And it's like
Yeah.
I feel like people like the Russo brothers are like trying to transition us to streaming fully and being like the theatrical experience is like dead and like we're just making things movies. But I'm like, that's why I'm like the directors now who I still love, they're very committed to the art form of cinema and keeping things in theaters as they should be meant to seen, and also talking about and trying to make people watch older movies because especially with Martin Scorsese, he is like restoring old movies from around the world and he does that work and everyone just gives him shit and I'm like, I don't know what to tell y'all that other than y'all are hateful and don't do research. A lot of people don't do research nowadays. It's annoying.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, that's the cool thing though. Like thinking about like you were saying, like just thinking about a lot of those people who are still in the realm of wanting to work like with Pedro Almodovar, even though they maybe can't speak Spanish or something, or even like directors like Scorsese going back and restoring these things. It is interesting kind of seeing that dynamic and that shift between like the cash grabs and like the art, right? Thinking about that. But now that I think about kind of some of those directors you mentioned, is there anyone in particular you would, if you were in like one of those directors' films, who would you choose? If you could choose one.
It's hard because like the top three, it probably would have to be either David Lynch because his movies are so dynamic and so mind bending. But I'm just like, I don't know if I would work well with like the material he's going with, which is why I go turn to like a Douglas Sirk or a Pedro Almodovar because they're more melodramatic and they just have a lot more. It's more colorful in the sense of the production they're giving, but also the characters that they're doing in the story. It just bursts with color and emotions that, once again, a lot of things these days are just flat. They're like earth tone. They're ugly to look at in movies. And I'm just like, whatever happened to color? And when I watch like a Written on the Wind, that's my favorite Douglas Sirk movie. Like Dorothy Malone, one of the best supporting actress Oscar winners out there. Love the scene where she dances her father to death. Like that scene. If you have you watched that movie?
I haven't seen it yet. No, I have it on the shelf though.
It's there's a scene in that movie where she comes home and her father's like mad at her because of what she was doing outside. And then she's just like, I don't care. And then she goes upstairs and she's like changing her clothes and she puts on the record and she's dancing. And at the same time, like her father's trying to go up the stairs to talk to her and he has a heart attack. And then it's like spliced together to show like she basically is causing his death. And I was like, damn, this is visual
So
storytelling right
would you
here.
would you choose Douglas Sirk for this answer?
Probably, yeah, because I'm like, it's
Yeah,
English, even though he was German originally. But like,
sure.
yeah, because he's just the master. His four films that are highly watched, like all of them are great. The weakest one would probably have to be Magnificent Obsession, but like he was just doing it. And I feel like most people who really love acting, because he really, I feel it was an actor's director. So I feel like if anyone like really loves acting, they would go to like Douglas Sirk. Pedro
Yeah,
Almodovar would be second, but like
that's good.
I feel like he kind of drifts into kookiness too much sometimes with like
Sure.
The Skin I Live With and like an I'm So Excited, even though I do love I'm So Excited. But
Yeah.
Pedro can be a little problematic when you look at some of his works like Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, or The Skin I Live In. It's like, what are you trying to say exactly here?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, no, I definitely I like those options. I haven't seen enough of both those directors though, but I'm definitely I have them on my list. I know there's like an Almodovar box set that I'm wanting to get, and then I have a few of Douglas Sirk films that I still haven't got to yet.
oh,
But
you got they're short
yeah,
and they're super breezy to get through. When it comes to Pedro Almodovar, if you haven't watched All About My Mother,
that's the one I need to watch first.
that's like his first, I'm pretty sure, Oscar win. And then actually no, he does actually have an what am I talking? He does have an Oscar himself. It's for Talk to Her for original screenplay. But like I recently rewatched that. That's a good movie, but not my favorite because once again, a little problematic. A little
Yeah.
problematic.
I have one question that might be one of the more difficult ones for you. But if your life was a movie, what would you title it?
I feel like it's a TV show, but or something, but like I feel like I've heard this before, but it's like Getting On. I feel like that's an HBO show that was about nurses or something because I don't know. That's how I feel about my life. Like I'm getting on. I've gone through phases. I've gone through some hardships, especially in like school with like bullying and shit. But it's like, you just gotta getting on with it, get on. And it's like, okay. Like I've come to realize with life, like I have OCD, so I like to make things clean and like in order. And people with OCD have problem with control, and it's like I feel like as I go older, I'm trying to just let go of things I can't control and just get on with my life because it's like some things you just can't control, like me breaking the screen on this phone, like the protector, and I'm just like, okay, you just gotta move on, get a new phone screen protector, and then like just get on with your life because just like dwelling on something is not gonna get good for you. So yeah, I'm just like get on with it, get on.
I can totally relate to that title. I love that title, by the way, because it very much speaks to me as well. Yeah. Well, I mean, this has been a lot of fun. One last question I have for you before we exit here, but what about this medium in particular has changed your worldview or outlook on life? If you could sum that up.
Mm, well, people really do say that people's exposure to other people is through media, which is why portrayals in media is so important, which is why when I watch media, like not only movies, but TV shows from around the world, like it helps me see how people see themselves, which is why when people just watch American movies and TV shows, I feel like you're getting the view of people only through the American lens. And it would like, I don't know if the word behoove works, but it would behoove people to like, watch like cinema and TV shows from other people's like countries. That way you can see how they see themselves and how like fully fleshed out they are, other than sometimes the caricatures like that American cinema and TV shows paint people out to be. Because, recently, like I think it was just today, like James Franco was like cast in a movie about Fidel Castro, and it's like he's not even like that ethnicity, but yeah, it's like what? And a lot of Hispanic actors are like, we have to like audition for drug lords and all that. And yet, when it comes to someone that we can actually portray and bring humanity and show something to, it's like we don't even get that. That's why I'm like, this medium has shown me that like just because you see these things in like popular American movies and TV shows, it's like that's not always the case, especially when you're seeing people of like color and like people who are not of the majority. Because I feel like America loves to show things that are in at the moment, and sometimes they don't even do that right. Like a lot of things with like LGBTQ like representation, it's like a lot of this feels like a lot of straight people wrote this and they were like, we did it, and it was like it's like, no, 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 you didn't, which is why I'm just like, it's more important to watch things from different parts of the world because you never know who's actually going to get something right on film. Because um, it's like this movie called The End of the Century. It's from Spain, and it's like about these two men. And it's like, I feel like that was something akin to like Call Me by Your Name that actually captured that experience better than like most things. It's like I just feel like cinema really can open people's minds up to the truth of reality, other rather than just hearing people tell you what it is, or like seeing it in like a popular medium, not medium, popular like movie or TV show, because like it really irks me that some people's like knowledge of like a person or like people in general can be traced back to like something they saw on TV or on the news. And it's like, some things can be manipulated. And I feel like with a research paper, you have to have not only one primary source but two, and then you have to put additional sources. That way you can be like, I know this for a fact because of all these things. And by watching more cinema and more TV from around the world, especially, you get the full picture of how people are. That way you can make a more informed decision. And I don't know, it just really has expanded my thought process on what is and what could actually be when it comes to people in this world and our world in general.
I mean, that's beautifully put, and I definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, that's the one of the reasons why I feel like the group of people who are watching this right now, hopefully, are empathetic people, or at least we're all in different parts of the world, and also we have different shoes on, and all sorts of different things. But like, hopefully, we can watch experiences, and hopefully by authentic people instead of people who are not in those particular shoes. Just saying like, oh look, we're in vogue or in fashion of something. But yes, that this has been an absolute treat having you on, Charles. Thank you so much for joining on today. Do you have any final thoughts, or like where we can find you?
I'm on my channel whenever I'm feeling like being on my channel. Now that it's like a lot cooler, I probably will like film. Filming is tiring. Like this is a very nice conversation, and it went by fast because when you're having fun, you like it goes by fast. But yeah, honestly, I could talk about like cinema and all that for like hours, but my friends get tired of it. Like I once tried talking to my sister about like this, and eventually her mind just glazed over, and she was like, "What is happening?" But like, yeah, I'm always on my channel, but yeah, I don't really have any more thoughts. It was very nice talking with you. It's always nice to talk to someone who really loves cinema. Love your collection in the background. Love your Johnny Guitar in the background.
Thank you.
Love that movie. God, Joan Crawford in that movie. One of the only westerns I will stand for.
It's a phenomenal. That's why it's there. But so anyway, thank you everyone for checking this out, and this check out Charles' channel. I'll be putting it in the link down below. But if you have any final thoughts, everyone, let us know in the comment section. We'll be glad to interact with you. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.